So when you use VBT, you can use it to test athletes, monitor athletes. You can look at fatigue management. You can prescribe loads for specific intent. You can do all these things. Individualized programming at scale. You can get athlete buy-in. You can do all this stuff, AEL, rate of force development, RSI, DSI, all these crazy things. But how do you implement in a way that's simple when you're a coach out there working with hundreds of athletes, and here I am saying, hey, add this another bit of sports science. You're just like, my gosh, I want to, but my life's already hectic. My job this week with this project is to make your life easier. Look, we're going to figure out, how do we individualize at scale? How do we screen people at scale? How do we get all these velocity profiles? How do we test our athletes? That's all it's about. And I'm going to teach you guys how to test your athletes to lump them into one of three groups. Are you looking at a cheetah who's fast, but maybe they're lacking in strength? Are you working with a kangaroo who's perfectly powerful? That's who we're looking for. Or are we working with gorillas who's a strong dude but needs to get faster? And then you can decide with velocity, how do you inch them towards the kangaroo? So that's what we're doing today. So first, we're going to talk about day one. And in day one, and notice you're going to see the same warm up for all 3 days. And so the reason why is because I want to standardize a warm up. So when you retest, you'll use the same warm up, and that way you can limit variability, of course. So you're going to look at jump rope, air squat right away. By the time you get to air squat, I'm starting to look at mobility. And you can, if I were you, that's the one where either, depending on how many people you're working with, but you can either jot it down, you can video it, however you want to rate it. You can look at lunges, you can look at mobility and stability, side lunges, walking knees to chest, because now we're just looking at trying to look how mobile they are with hip flexion. Frankenstein's, we're looking also at hip flexion with a straight leg. We're walking at wall sits with the angel T-spine movement, so I can look at the thoracic spine, aka also the lats. And then we're going to do the one that really you could not worry about any of those, but just do the overhead squat with the PVC pipe, and you would know. If they can do that one, then you really don't need to worry about making note of anything, especially if you get them to do a close grip, because I promise you at that point, the thoracic spine has great movement. But if the overhead squat is not so good, and you can decide how you want to judge it, but I kind of use the FMS standards. So if they can keep their arms fairly close and sit all the way, basically their hamstrings on their calves, and keep their feet flat on the ground and their hands directly above their ears, then I'm giving them a 3. And so if they're able to do it, but there's a little variation, we're looking at 2. If they're not able to do it, it's a 1. If there's pain, it's a straight 0. So we got a problem. And so, but if they're not, if they're a 2 or 3, you could probably roll right along. But the 1, you probably need to go back to one of those first and kind of find out why, or even take it deeper than this if you have to. Let me give you some reasoning why we did a simple 3-day program like we did. And what we're doing is that we're doing a 3-day, 3-week workout, so you can, as you're testing your athletes, you're also getting them better in athletic performance. Instead of spending so much time in testing your athletes, especially even if you're like a private facility, or if you have an athlete join you late in the year, whatever it is, you can easily have them work out with the team and do this workout. So they're still getting better. They're still getting familiar with your system. But what you're doing is you're testing, instead of spending days at a time testing each of your athletes. I'm sure you guys are working with anywhere between 50 to hundreds of athletes. You just put them through the workout. And then what you're doing in day one, what we're doing is on day one, we're looking at ballistic strength or ballistic performance with the counter movement jumps and the concentric jumps. And the reason why we're doing both is because each tell you something a little different. So you got to remember, if you're really good at the counter movement jump, that shows you're really proficient using the stretch shortening cycle. Also, you have good elasticity, tendon quality is perfect. And just you're looking at your neuromuscular system is efficiently firing. If you're really good at the concentric only, your starting strength is awesome. That means your motor units are firing at a really high rate, and that's good rate coding. So your ability to overcome inertia is really good. Now here's what you do. You take the whole group and you look at the difference in the two as a whole, because there should always be your counter movement jump should always be a little bit higher than your concentric jump. But just look at your group as a whole. And then if an athlete has there's less of a difference in the two, then you might consider plyometrics, especially like drop jumps or more bounding. If there's more distance, meaning you're really good at the counter movement jump, but you're not very good at all at the concentric jump, you might want to consider really focusing on strength and power. So doing things like the Olympic lifts or variations of that and trap bar deadlifts. But other than that, you'll notice that I've set up all of these great, like, you do the same jumps each and every day in the back squat, whether you're looking at the back squat in day 1 or you're looking at the bench press in day 2 or the trap bar deadlift in day 3. I've done the same thing when it comes to the more powerful movements like the trap bar jumps, the push press, and the trap bar jumps from hang. And so the reason why you want to pick the same jumps each and every day is because you set up like control levels there. So it's a way of like saying, it's simple too. So if an athlete at 135 on you say they get to, like 185 on the back squat and they're way slower than normal, you can set up control levels saying like if you're between like 0 and 5% slower than normal, no problem, continue on. That's part of the process. If they're 5 to 10% slower than normal, consider 20 to 25% decrease in not only their intensity but also the total volume. And if they're more than 10%, personally, I would recommend at that point doing some active recovery and sending them home. But that, once again, that's up to you. But at least it's easy. It's not percentage based, because percentage based is going to make it, each athlete has to remember, it's 75%. But it's easy to say, hey, when you get to 185, if you're slow, here's what you do. And that's up to you. You'll probably notice that if they're slow at the 135, they're probably going to be slow at 185. So you can choose which one of those becomes your control level, your control intensity, we'll call it. That'll be up to you. You can do the same thing with counter movement jumps or concentric jumps or trap bar jumps, whichever. But the thing you might find is that sometimes the athletes are jumping really well, but they're still strong. I just talked to Hampton Morris's father. Hampton is the best weightlifter ever in American history, and they do that. If his trap bar jumps are terrible, they will really either skip or take it easy on the Olympic lifts because it's a definite correlation, but they still might squat well. So you could probably, if I were you, continue on the squat. Maybe if you do poorly on your jumps, consider cutting things back on the trap bar jumps, and then you can also look at when you back squat. If it's also not good, take it to the house. So, but feel free to set up your own control levels, watch for your own patterns. The key thing is that when this whole program is over, you will have force velocity profiles for all of your movements, for your back squat, for your bench press, for your trap bar deadlift. So you'll have those, those numbers set up. It'll be the same for everyone, except they're all going to end up doing different, like, absolute strength numbers. So in week 3, it will be the week that we're going to really push it a little hard in the back squat, in the bench press, and in the deadlift. And the reason is because now they're more efficient in those movement patterns. And the same thing, we're doing the same thing with the more powerful, we'll call them Olympic lifting variations, like the trap bar jumps. Same thing is like, but we're using peak velocity on the trap bar jumps and the trap bar counter movement jumps. And the reason is because I've looked at those numbers, and those are the control limits that I've come up with using peak velocity. That's from Brian Mann. And 1.2 is a very safe number. It's still going to be a high rate of power development. And I'm not going so heavy that I'm risking my athletes. But I will get an idea of what their trap bar jump will be and their ability to produce power. But the back squat is the one I definitely want to, no lower than 0.4 meters per second, because especially depends if you're dealing with university athletes who've been in your program for a while, you might consider going to 0.35. But I find that 0.4 is going to tell you all you want to know, because you're going to get your 1RM predictions at 0.4 in the back squat, at 0.3 in the bench. Let me double check. Yeah, I did 0.4 in the bench press as well, and the same thing, the trap bar deadlifts. And I would even in the bench press, you could go as low as 0.3, because 0.3 is still nowhere near missing, because people are going to fail. Their minimum velocity threshold on the bench press is going to be a lot less than the squat, because you got less distance to produce force, is what it is. Not to mention you have smaller muscles creating this force. And with the trap bar deadlifts, you're going to 0.4 as well. But these are just my recommendations. Feel free, if your athletes are more experienced, feel free to drop it a little bit lower on the squats to 0.35, and maybe 0.3 or slightly less on the bench press and the trap bar deadlifts. But also I'll have to mention on day one, because I just don't want to go through what you're already looking at and just say the same thing over. But on day one, the back squat and your supersetting. By the way, 2A, when you see something 2A, 2B, that's saying superset. Because you see 1, then you see 2A, 2B, those two go together. Then you see 3A and 3B, those two go together. But with the depth jump, you can get the RSI score. And so you're going to look at the athlete's reactive ability, which is a mixture of the stretch shortening cycle and elasticity, and because you're looking at ground contact time. This one you'll find is there's a way more correlated to speed than the counter movement jumps even. I mean, those are a good look, but the reactive strength index, and by the way, if you go to the article, there's a link to our reactive strength index article, which will tell you all about that. That one shows high correlations in that number, that marker to speed. So definitely look at that one. Especially if you're using the GymWare RS, which I hope you are, it's just an easy way to test it. So, and by the way, most of these you could do whether you have the GymWare RS or the Flex. The counter movement jumps and concentric, I would just use a bar only. And just at that point, all you're going to do, you're still looking at your team as a whole, so it doesn't really matter. And and like I said, you'll set those. You'll see what your team average is and the difference in vertical versus concentric only. And you can even get lighter bars. They make those 20 or those 10 kilogram, 5 kilogram bars. So if you want to use less, but still, if you do these jumps with the barbell and the flex, then you're still going to get a really good idea of your ballistic force ability. So, and you'll still be able to do a dynamic strength index. It's just going to be slightly different, and you'll have to look at your teams as a whole. And once again, there'll be a link in the article of this to the dynamic strength index, which will tell you all about it. Because when you're done, you will have force velocity profiles on all these things. You'll have a dynamic strength index, which is a look at ballistic and strength movements, your difference in force production. You'll have your 1RM prediction. You'll have where you produce power. At what intensity do you produce max power? Because the links, if you want to learn more about all of these tests that I'm talking about, there'll be links to all of them. But you will have all that. And then a couple things I want to mention before we go to is in day one, you will also be looking at your dumbbell side lunges. So we're going to look at your health, the hips of your health. In day two, you'll look at the broad jumps. So that's not really related to velocity-based training, but as long as you have a measuring tape, you can look at that. And that's just looking at horizontal ballistic force, which in my experience is a higher indicator of a faster athlete, because the hips are going to be able to open up completely, which is important when you're looking at extension in a sprint. You're also going to look at now unilateral jump repeats. This is a really good one because you're going to get asymmetries, but you're also going to look at reactive ability. And what I would do is just get the team average and see if your athlete is above average or below average in their ground contact time and look at the ground contact time compared to how high they're jumping. So, if you don't want to do the reactive strength index or measure it with the gym wear, or if you only have a flex, you could definitely do the unilateral jumps with a barbell and still get a team average and still look at reactive ability and asymmetries. So if you have a major asymmetry, let's say that you do your team as a whole, and if someone is way more asymmetrical than the team average, because heads up, almost everybody in the world is asymmetrical by nature. It's just, are they more asymmetrical than the norm? If they are, you can start to, give that individual some programming that they could do either on their own to bring that asymmetry up. With the push press, I give the same thing. I give the standard jumps, what to work to, so you can look at upper body power development, bench press. I'm just, like I said in the article, I'm only choosing bench press because it's just the most popular. Feel free to do, military press, do incline, whatever you feel you want to do for upper body strength. And we're supersetting that with the drop step med ball punch. That's not going to really tell you anything because you can't measure it, but you're beginning to work on rotational power. Then you got your pull-ups, you got your dips. Super important to look at relative strength, and you can look at max reps. You can do 3 sets, and on the last, if you want to, on that really take the score from the last week, because get your athletes used to doing pull-ups and used to doing dips, and they're going to get better just because their body gets better. Just like everything that you're going to find that on week 3, they're probably going to do their best on everything because they're more efficient. Their body's more efficient at doing it, and so. But just do a max rep test. Do it on the first one. Or you can do a max hold. If you have, and there's plenty of athletes out there who can't do a pull-up. And so if they can't, just do a max hold. And at least you can monitor progress. You will normally find when someone is able to do a max pull-up with their chin above the bar to their chest, when they can do it for 60 seconds, they're probably ready to do a pull-up. But what I would do is if someone can't do a pull-up, to get them there is hold as long as they can and lower themselves as slow as possible for each and every rep. So dips, do the same thing. Day 3, there is one thing I would say. The landmine split stance push press is a great way to monitor upper body rotational power development. I use it with my UFC athlete, Brad Katona. We do the same thing. We look at, and I've got some parameters there. You can take the bar and working up by 5 pounds or kilos up to either 5 or 10 kilos every set until you're getting to working up until the mean velocity drops, below 0.85 meters per second, which is, if you can produce your max power right around there, that would be perfect. And so, the last thing I need to mention is this: is the reason we do the trap bar jumps from hang versus on day 1, we do trap bar jumps, just concentric only, is once again we're looking at your ability to produce power, with the stretch while using the stretch shortening cycle under load versus starting strength with the load. And so, kind of like the vertical leap counter movement jump versus the concentric only jump, yet loaded. And so really more how your ability to produce power, your maximum power using the stretch shortening cycle or with your starting strength ability. They're both different, your ability to explode into an athlete, if you're a lineman, if you explode from your stance and hit somebody, or your ability to run, stop, load, and hit somebody using that stretch shortening cycle. There's just a little difference. Then that's pretty much it. Trap bar deadlift, we're looking at the difference in that versus squat. Same thing, but now we're looking at absolute strength. Are you better at the stretch shortening cycle or by using, the concentric only starting strength? So we'll say the pistol squats. I've got a good link now. If you're not able to do pistol squats, and there's a good chance your athlete can't, a link to Squat University's video on how to progress the pistol squat. It's a good one. But simple as, if they can't do a full pistol squat for 3 to 5 reps, then what I would say is have them do it to a box or to a bench, and look at how low can they go with a good pistol squat, and then just try to progress that, and then compare it to the rest of the team. I hope this helps. Helps you kind of get a better idea of why I did it the way I did. Like I said, when you get to the end of this, we will have done all the work for you. You will already have a dynamic strength index, a reactive strength index, a force velocity profile on the squat, the bench, the deadlift. You will have the rate of which you produced power in the back squat, the bench, and the deadlift, which will tell you a lot. Once again, those are all linked here. And you'll look at the counter movement jump versus the squat jump, and that will tell you a ton about, are you good at using your reactive ability, or that combination of elasticity and stretch shortening cycle, or are you really good at starting strength? You will know, and you will set up those fatigue management levels, whether you want to use the jumps or a combination of the jump and the squat. It is up to you, but I would, you've got it. It makes it super easy. As long as you set up your control levels, it runs itself. And now you won't have to do anything. Once you've done this program, we have everything in the back end. Once again, if you want to, I'll put up right here. As you can see, you'll be able to, this is me comparing my athletes in the back squat. You will look at their peak power per kilogram, meaning, pound for pound, are they producing power well? You can look at their mean velocity. You can look, the height would be good if you're looking at like a jump, but their mean velocity, their peak power, so regardless of who they are, or their peak power based on their body weight. You can see how it all changes and tells you something about each of those athletes. So anyway, I hope this video helped, and we're gonna do some videos of a lot of the warm up, and also a couple of the exercises on each day to show you how to set it up in the GymWare, in the actual iPad, and how we perform the movements and the tests. So that'll also be available to you by the time this comes out. So like always, email me, travis@gymware.com, if you have any questions about this, or whether it's the article, or whether it's this video, or any things you would like me to do some content on in the future. Thanks. Go to gymware.com if you want to, for all of your VBT needs, of course, and if you want to read all of my free articles, and there's a lot of it now. So go to the blog section and get that. Thank you.